All right. Is my mic on? We're good? You guys can hear me? Okay. So in Exodus, we have a commandment that says the following: honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. Honor your father, honor your mother. Well, today we want to honor all the moms, including those who, for many reasons, may not have had children of their own, but because of their motherly instincts, they serve perhaps as caregivers. Mother's Day can be a joyful time, but as we all know, we got to remember that so many good women in our lives have influenced us in so many ways. At the same time, we recognize that this day can also carry mixed emotions. For some, relationships with their mothers, they can be complicated, and we must recognize that. Those relationships can be complicated for any number of reasons. Still, it is on the foundations of a mother's love that so much of our world rests. So after the message, we're going to take just a few minutes. If anybody wants to share a memory or something special about your mother, we'll invite you up to do that. There's absolutely no pressure to do so, but if you're so inclined and you want to share something, we'll allow for that at the end of the service here. So Proverbs 31 speaks about blessings of a virtuous wife. This morning I would like us to read it and dedicate it to all the mothers, all the caregivers, including those who have already passed on, because the virtues of a good wife are equally the virtues of good mothers. So I'm going to ask Tammy to come forward, and she'll be reading Proverbs chapter 31, verses 10 through 31.
An excellent wife, who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises well in yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength. She makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hand to her distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hand to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her households are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and her works praise her in the gates.
Thank you, Tammy. At the end of the service, Tammy has a little gift she would like to give all the ladies here today. So don't leave before seeing her. She's be over by the coffee station there. So by one count, Mother's Day is celebrated in over 100 countries worldwide. 75 of those countries observe it on the second Sunday of May. Now, while I've always appreciated setting aside a day to honor our mothers, I've never actually took the time to look into the history of how Mother's Day came about. Purely out of curiosity, how many of you know the history or the origins of Mother's Day? Any hands? Good. I wasn't alone then, because I didn't either. Well, not surprisingly, Mother's Day is due to the efforts of a daughter who wanted to honor her mother's tireless work doing things that only moms can do. In its modern form, the holiday originated in the United States, and it was established by Anna Jarvis, who sought to honor her mother, Anne Jarvis. Anne was the daughter of a Methodist parents, and her father was a pastor. In 1850, she married the son of a Baptist minister who became a very successful merchant. Now, the history is a little bit uncertain in this, but Jarvis bore somewhere between 11 and 13 children over the course of 17 years. Of these, only 4 of them survived to adulthood. The others died of diseases such as measles, typhoid fever, and diphtheria. The devastating loss of so many of her children inspired Anne Jarvis to organize many women's groups to promote friendship and proper health and hygiene, hoping that they too would not become sick. Then in 1868, 3 years after the end of the Civil War, she organized a Mother's Friendship Day to promote reconciliation between Union and Confederate veterans and their families. You see, Anne Jarvis did what mothers do best. She loved sacrificially for family and for community. In 1876, Anna Jarvis, the daughter, witnessed her mother offer a simple but very insightful prayer at the end of Sunday school class. The prayer of her mother went as follows: I hope and pray that someone, sometime, will found a Memorial Mother's Day commemorating mothers for the matchless service they render to humanity in every field of life. They are entitled to it. Anna Jarvis never forgot the prayer of her mother. After Anne Jarvis died in 1905, her daughter began a writing and public speaking campaign directed at local, state, and national figures and organizations. Her efforts worked. On May 12, 1908, a Mother's Day service was held at her late mother's home church in Grafton, West Virginia. Within 5 years, virtually every state was observing the day. And in 1914, Woodrow Wilson made a national holiday to acknowledge mothers. In the words of the late Paul Harvey, now you know the rest of the story. That is how Mother's Day came about. But the truth is, there have been tens of millions of mothers just like Anne Jarvis. The inherent love of a mother for her children and her community should not be underestimated. The Institute for Family Studies describes a mother's love this way: a mother's love is profound, it's unconditional and nurturing bond, often considered the strongest of all human affection. It serves as the foundation for a child's emotional security, self-esteem, mental health, providing safe, consistent, and selfless presence that shapes their growth. So while this statement could not be more true, mothers are at times undoubtedly their own worst enemies. I doubt that there has ever been a mother who at times feels that they have somehow failed in their role or wishes that they had maybe parented differently. Now, I think I can confidently say this happens because a mom's love for their children is so deep that any perceived deficiency in their children, it can leave a scar on their hearts. It's been said that a parent is only as happy as their least happy child. Well, this may be true of both parents. It is the moms who feel the burden most heavily. Sadly, we are now living in a generation where children are increasingly critical of parents. In some instances, they blame their parents' parenting ability on their own struggles and their own issues. And when this happens, it's the mothers who suffer the most. Mothers are hurt on a deeper level. Arguably, it's just a measure of how much they love their children. Now, it is important to be reminded that moms, for all of their imperfections, perceived or otherwise, they need to be honored. We all strive to do our best for our children, but generally speaking, it is the mother that anchors the family. So we're going to look at two women in Scripture from two different perspectives. We're going to look at Naomi, the mother-in-law, and Mary, the mother of Christ. Like all moms, these two ladies were imperfect people who did their very best under extraordinary circumstances. As parents, the greatest expression of love is typically directed towards our own children, and rightfully so. But the Scriptures reveal something as common today as it was in ancient times. That is the role of a mother-in-law. A mom's capacity to love their children often extends to those who marry their sons and their daughters. And the best example of this dual role is Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law. Because of Naomi's extraordinary capacity to extend unconditional love beyond her own children, she is often called the Bible's mother-in-law. Naomi's name means sweet or pleasant, which reveals something of her character and her nature. However, her life, it really was a mosaic of joy and sorrow. Naomi lived during the time of the Judges. She was the wife of a man named Elimelech, and they lived in Bethlehem with their two sons. When famine hits Judea, Elimelech, Naomi, and their sons, they relocate to the land of Moab. There, her sons marry two Moabite women. After about 10 years, tragedy strikes. Elimelech dies, and both Naomi's sons also die, leaving Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah as widows. In time, Naomi hears that the famine in Judea is over, and so she decides to return back home. Orpah stays in Moab, but Ruth chooses to move to the land of Israel with Naomi. Now, before returning to Israel, Naomi blesses Ruth and Orpah, telling them they should return to their mother's homes so that they might find new husbands. But Ruth will have nothing to do with it. It's not happening. She is determined to return with her mother-in-law to the land of Israel. And so the two of them, they set off together. When Naomi and Ruth arrive back in Bethlehem, the women of the town greet her by name. But Naomi, she cries out. She says, "Do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara," bitter. "For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home empty." Little did Naomi know that from this bitter sorrow, great blessings would come to her and her descendants. As you know, eventually Ruth goes on to meet a local landowner named Boaz. He's very kind to her. Naomi recognizes the providence of God in providing a kinsman redeemer for her daughter-in-law. Alas, Naomi sees that her suffering is not in vain. Seeing God's hand in these events, Naomi encourages Ruth to go to Boaz, who is sleeping at the threshing floor, to ask him to redeem her and her property. Naomi's concern was for Ruth, that Ruth would find a husband, that she would find a provider. Her bitterness is turned to joy. In the end, she gains a son-in-law who would provide for both her and Ruth. Once again, the women of Bethlehem, they go on to see Naomi and they say this, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout all of Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. Daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has given birth to him." Naomi was no longer bitter. Her life again became sweet. It became pleasant. Naomi's love for her sons extended to both her daughter-in-law. Ruth insisted that she would follow her wherever she went. It was the love of a mother turned mother-in-law that forever changed our world. The scriptures record that Christ's lineage comes from Naomi's family line. The love of a mother-in-law changed the world. So to all the mother-in-laws, future mother-in-law, don't underestimate the importance of showing love and kindness to your growing families. Tammy and I have been blessed with 3 amazing sons. Although we would have loved a daughter also, that never happened. In time, all 3 boys are married, and now we have 3 beautiful daughter-in-law. Very early on, Tammy would correct me saying, "They are not our daughter-in-law, they are our daughters." Calling them her daughters was simply an extension of the love she has for her own sons. Like Naomi, Tammy works tirelessly for our extended family, as do many of you. So to all the mother-in-law, thank you for sharing your love. And that includes my own mother-in-law, who's here this morning. Mom has spent countless hours baking for us, preparing meals when we're busy, watching the great-grandchildren. Mom works tirelessly as a mother-in-law. If there's a party, she's going to be there. If our grandchildren have an activity, she will be there. Thank you, Mom. The scriptures are replete with stories of amazing mothers, but none capture the intimate respect seen between that of Mary and Jesus. So we can glean a lot from Mary's life. She was a very special lady and someone whom the Lord found favor with. All the same, I'm certain that Mary would be deeply disturbed if she knew how she has been idolized and, dare I say, worshipped in some faith circles. Mary was also an imperfect person whom God used for extraordinary purposes. Her motherhood journey was that of a divine path, but she was most certainly human, just like moms of every generation. Several aspects of Mary's life serve as good inspiration for all moms. The first being that she was a woman of amazing faith. While the scriptures are not explicit, most scholars and historians suggest that Mary could have been as young as 14 to 16 years when she gave birth to Jesus. 14 to 16 years old. There's even archaeological evidence from the first century that shows women's age at marriage was generally between 12 to 17, with the majority of them being about 13 years old. So imagine what must have been going through the mind of a young Mary when the angel Gabriel shows up and he says this to her: "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bring forth a son, and you shall name him Jesus." Understandably, Mary responds, how can this be, since I do not know a man? Gabriel reassures her, with God, nothing's impossible. And then in a very simple act of faith, Mary replies, "Behold, the maidservant of the Lord, let it be to me according to your word." What an amazing degree of faith she must have had to believe that she could not only conceive by way of the Holy Spirit, but that her baby would be called the Son of the Most High. But Mary's life was not without a degree of uncertainty either. Every mother works tirelessly to prepare their home for the arrival of their baby. Much effort is put into creating a safe, stable, and cozy environment for the child to grow up in. But this was not Mary's reality. In Matthew 2, when Jesus was approximately 2 years of age, we read the following: "An angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, 'Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring word to you. For Herod will seek your young child to destroy him." Now, those who study chronology say that Joseph and Mary and young Jesus, they stayed in Egypt anywhere between a few months to as much as 3 or 4 years. Regardless, Mary had to forego the comforts of a stable and familiar home for her family. Mary endured displacement to ensure that her son's fate would not fall into the hands of Herod. You see, moms will stop at nothing to protect their children. Forgoing the comforts of home, family, and country was something Mary never winced at. She did what she needed to do for the love of her family. Now, I'm confident that if Mary were to sit down with any of our moms here today, the stories exchanged about motherhood would probably be quite familiar. You would probably share some of the same stories. Every mom has felt the anxiety of losing sight of their children. Within a few seconds, the child that was standing next to you disappears. They're gone. Panic and desperation set in. Everyone starts looking for the lost child. It happens to every parent. It happened to Mary. Mary was just like every mom in every generation. You see, every year Mary and Joseph, they went to Jerusalem for the feast of Passover. And as they had done so many times when the feast was over, they packed up their belongings and they journeyed back home. On one occasion, they were already a full day into their journey home when Mary and Joseph discovered Jesus was not in the caravan with them. He was missing. Jesus being about 12 years old, they had assumed he was among family and friends that had accompanied them. He must have been somewhere in the caravan amongst his relatives, so they just kept journeying until they realized he was nowhere to be found. He was gone. In a panic, they returned to Jerusalem, and it would take another 3 more days before they would find the little boy, Jesus. They found him in the temple. He was sitting in the midst of teachers, both listening to them and asking questions. Upon finding him, Mary, like all mothers, is relieved and she's angry. She's angry with Jesus. "Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously. Did you not know I had to be about my Father's business?" Jesus was obedient and he went with his parents. You see, a mom's perceived anger toward her children is not always a misplaced anger. It is a measure of her intense love for her children. If Mary can get angry and upset at her children, then certainly a mom should be extended grace when they do the same for those that they love the most. There is an often overlooked aspect of Mary's struggles that we don't talk about a lot. The fact is that she had a daunting task of raising her family as a widow. Now, the Bible does not record the exact date or the cause of Joseph's death, her husband, but it is generally understood that he died before Jesus began his public ministry. He's last mentioned when Jesus is about 12 years old and is absent during his adult life. He's absent during his crucifixion, indicating that he passed away somewhere when Jesus was just prior to entering his ministry. We do know that Mary had lost a God-fearing and humble man. He was faithful to the law of Moses. Though he had a legal right to divorce Mary when he found out she was pregnant, he intended to do so quietly because he did not want to bring any shame upon her. Now, Joseph, being a carpenter, he worked hard to provide for his family, even teaching his eldest son, Jesus, the trade skills. Mary had lost an incredible husband. And now the shared responsibility of raising a family fell largely upon mom, at least until Jesus was old enough to become the family's chief provider and protector. So for all the single moms out there, the battle is real. The struggles can feel overwhelming at times. I'm sure Mary would affirm the same. May God give those a double portion of endurance and know that there is no shame in seeking the help of those that God has brought into your lives. It is likely that Mary relied heavily on family after the death of her husband. And I'm sure she was often overwhelmed, and I'm sure she often questioned her own capacity to cope. Being the mother of children is not always easy, let alone being a single mom, a widow. The mother of Jesus brought its own set of unique circumstances. Certainly, the deep, inherent love of a mom is what sustained Mary through her many difficulties and her many trials. To all the moms and the caregivers, know that the Lord loves you deeply. Our families depend on you. We need you, and we want to honor you for your selfless sacrifice of love for family. Mary, like you, was an imperfect mother who lived a life of sacrifice. Being a mom is the most difficult job in the world, and you need to be honored for your efforts. You see, Jesus knew that the life of his mother was not easy. And so we shouldn't be surprised that some of his final words before his death were reserved for Mom. One of the most moving narratives in the Gospels happens while Jesus is hanging on the cross. Imagine this with me. Jesus is enduring unimaginable suffering. His hands and feet, they're pierced to the cross. The sin of the world is upon him. Breathing is becoming increasingly more difficult. His body, it's starting to shut down. He's been humiliated. He's been beaten. He's been ridiculed. And through it all, Jesus turns his attention to his mother, who is witnessing what no mother should have to endure. Jesus is carrying the weight of the world on the cross, yet some of his final words were directed towards his precious mother. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing by, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her to his own home. Knowing that Mom would be taken care of, Christ surrendered his life. Mom had given everything she had for her family. Now it was time for her to be taken care of. To all the moms who have sacrificed so much for the children, we say thank you. To all the moms who struggle or feel inadequate or have made mistakes, well, that makes you an imperfect mother, just like every mother in every generation. In so many ways, our world stands because of our dear mother's unconditional love. Thank you, moms. I have just a personal thing I'll share at the end in a moment here about my own mother. But before I do that, is there anybody who wants to share something about your mom, a memory, or something that is close to your own heart? Again, no pressure, but I want to welcome that opportunity. I know it's awkward when you're in church standing up and that, but sometimes those conversations are best served over coffee or at the dinner table.